Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever and whenever it is you're watching this. We want to welcome you to our sixth and final session to our Board Bootcamp. In this series, we're going to be covering board exposure. And this first topic to this session is speaking on ambassadorship. Now, ambassadorship, it's a term that we throw around a lot. But if you want to think about what this might be, think about the ambassador, the U.S. ambassador. Like, what do? They go to different countries and they advocate and they make others aware of the U.S. And their intentions, their goodwill, and the different things that they're going to do in the future. So they're just making other countries comfortable with them. That's what they do as ambassadors. They advocate for the U.S. And they advocate for the citizens of the U.S. in those other countries as well. So you can think of how we're going to talk about this topic the same, but I'm going to clarify when it comes to nonprofit boards, how nonprofit boards may want to use that term ambassadorship, because ambassadorship is a part of boards, right? And it's a function of the board. So, but because a lot of you looking at this might say, I've never heard about that on a board. I've heard of ambassadors before, but I've never heard about that as a function of our members on a board of directors. Well, let me break down the importance of it. So, the importance of having an ambassador is what moves a nonprofit mission forward. It's what expands the notoriety. It expands the awareness of that nonprofit in the marketplace. So without an ambassador or some sort of ambassador medium, there would be a stagnation of mission. There would be a constriction of the expansion of the nonprofit, and the awareness would dwindle. So you might be doing ambassadorship and just not know that that's what you're doing. So that's what an ambassador does. So what I know from different stats out there, one specific stat from Board Source, it said about 52% of nonprofits actively practice the ambassadorship function, whereas 48% know nothing about it. So that kind of can tell you and make you not feel so bad. I don't know what that is. There's a lot of other nonprofit boards that don't have no clue what ambassadorship is. So that's what we're here to talk about it. So we'll start it off like this. As an ambassador, I'm representing the nonprofit as a board member. So Richard, I'm gonna ask you this question. So as a board member, how should you be poised to engage, and what methods and what avenues would you engage the public domain to fulfill that function of an ambassador?
Well, let me first say the concept of ambassadors have been around forever. Ever since nonprofits started, there have been ambassadors. It's just not called that. Mm-hmm. It was just friends of the board who were who bought into the mission and were espousing the nonprofit among the community. So that's what an ambassador really is. It's an advocate for the nonprofit. And it's people who aren't necessarily on the board, but who go out and reach out to their friends, acquaintances, just to say, hey, this is a really cool nonprofit, and give information to their friends in the community about the nonprofit. So I think people get hung up on the term ambassador because it sounds so formal. Mm-hmm. And ambassadorship is a formal program. So people are officially designated as, okay, you're an ambassador. Mm-hmm. You go out now and advocate for the nonprofit. Mm-hmm. Specifically to your question, I also disagree with the fact that board members are ambassadors, should be ambassadors. Mm. I mean, board members should be ambassadors anyway. with or without a formal ambassador program.
Mm-hmm.
So a board member should always be out there looking for opportunities to let the public know about the good things a nonprofit's doing.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, a board member should always be going out there looking for funds, for giving, and that kind of thing anyway. So to me, the ambassadorship program should be people that aren't on the board going out and doing that.
Okay.
So, you know, seeking funding, seeking people to understand what the organization's all about. That's to me, the key point for an ambassadorship is to have people other than the board going out there, reaching out, because that's an addition to what board members normally do. So if the only ambassadors you have are your board members, that's not a very effective ambassadorship program. But if I were on a board and I said, hey Aaron, you know a lot about the nonprofit that I'm a board member of, and I explain the mission and all that to you, can you go out and tell your friends about it and tell them what a great organization we have? So to me, ambassador, has to be, if you have a formal program, somebody that's not on the board.
I'm going to challenge that because I agree, but I think their role, the board members' role as ambassadors, is even that much more critical because they have to be ambassadors to these movers and shakers. These hobnobbers. I don't know if that's a negative term or not, but the ones that rub shoulders with those folks that have the resources to help move the nonprofit forward. They have to be poised and engaged and maybe even trained to engage those specific members of the public so that they can reach out and kind of spread the wings. So it's almost like a tier,
it is a tier
system. Yeah.
Board member is the top tier. Ambassadors are, in my mind anyway, a tier below that in that they don't have the responsibilities that board members do. But they still go on and reach the, what you call them, hobnobbers out there. So ambassadors should be people that also run in the same circles.
Yes.
But they don't need to have the fiscal and fiduciary responsibilities a board member has. But they're just, I don't want to say salespeople for the organization, but kind of like advocates.
Yeah, and but that would make sense because it frees them up of maybe being constricted and confined by certain things, which gives them, the flexibility to be themselves. That's how their friends, their cohorts want to see them. Don't bring me anything fake. I want to, what is the authenticity of this nonprofit you're trying to get me to buy into? But then it comes back though to how does the board member already need to have those connections, or do they need to be trained formally or informally or taken around in communities, maybe sitting on other different organizations, panels, or what have you, to meet these folks, these groups that they need to be engaging to expand the mission, to expand the nonprofits?
Yes to all of your questions there.
Okay.
The ideal ambassador, to me, as you said, are the people that are out in the community, know a lot about the mission of the organization, and know a lot of people who might be interested in that kind of a mission. So I think the training needs to be at both the board level as well as the ambassadors. So the board members have to be trained in, like you said, what an ambassador does, how to attract ambassadors, and the ambassadors themselves have to be trained in some of the what you can and cannot say kinds of things, and how to approach people that you know. There needs to be that kind of training, I think, at both levels.
That makes sense. So it's actually it's setting to set the board up for success. There needs to be a positioning, if you will, of, because you have to be to be successful if you're intentional about it.
Right.
Because I think, like you said, I think we're all doing it. I think we're all doing it. but it's no intentionality about it. So it's happenstance. Okay, oh, we got a windfall this year. Happenstance. You know, it wasn't intentional, just something, just do it, but we don't know the term, we don't know what to call it. So I think sometimes, even if the name is formal, like calling it what it is, it brings an awareness to it that it wasn't there before. Oh, we were doing that. It's almost like for us, internal control. Yeah. Like, oh, we didn't know that was there. We didn't know, okay, why is that being done? And so you ask these different questions. Okay, well, yeah, we only spent a day there, but if we spent a week there, we could have, you know what I mean? So it kind of helps us. So I think having the training, having, as you mentioned, connections with the expanded world, you know, the marketplace, individuals in those marketplaces that have the connections and have the know-how and expertise and freedom to speak to others that might have that same mission at heart.
You know, the other thing about ambassadors, the reason that term came about and the reason it's a formalized program, people like to have a role in a nonprofit, and giving somebody the title of ambassador motivates them more than just, hey, go out there and talk to your friends. You know? That's one of the main reasons ambassadorship has taken off, because people like to have a title. You know, and like, I'm an ambassador for this nonprofit. It just sounds impressive. You know?
So
people do, like you said, people do that all the time anyway. But having a formal program kind of makes it more of a more gravitas. It's something really important. People realize, hey, this guy's an ambassador. Must be important.
Let's listen to him. You know, So at the end of the day, just to be clear, an ambassador is an advocate for the nonprofit. And what they do is to push the mission of the nonprofit itself forward, right? So we started this talk off as, you know, without it, and that's why we know it's being done. It's being done even, so I mentioned the statistics of the 52% are actively doing it and 48% really don't know what it is, kind of a thing. They're still doing it, because if they're in existence and they're still part of the conversation of the marketplace, they're doing it. Because again, you need it to move the mission forward, right? And to advocate for the nonprofit, to keep it alive, to keep it permeating and growing. And without it, like we said, you know, it would stagnate the growth, you know, of the nonprofit, and it would constrict the movement of the mission, you know, and it would dwindle and, you know, for the lack of a better term, die out, right? So it's being done, but if it's done in intentionality, who knows how much further you can get, and you can push that nonprofit forward.